Hi and welcome everybody. Welcome to our second session of discovering our roles. This time I have created another PowerPoint for you and hopefully you will find it helpful. And if you're writing questions down, I wanted to mention that if you wanted to email them to me as well, you can send Julie that request and she and I can just chat about that. So I hope that you're doing well and we're able to get outside after some of the restrictions have been lifted. And I'm going to start sharing my screen and we'll get started. All right, so as I mentioned, this is part 2. And I want you to think about what roles were you able to identify. And as always, please have some paper and a pen, marker, crayon, whatever you have handy to do some thinking and reflection. And we're going to talk about in what ways did you take charge of these roles that you had discovered. And then we're going to talk a little bit about how you begin to rebuild. So I want to first ask you, what do you see here? So yes, inevitably it's a glass filled with some water. And I just really want you to think about that question, is it half empty or is it half full? So take some time, maybe pause this video and reflect on a little bit about what you see here. So you've identified your new roles, so now what? I want to think about how you're feeling with respect to each of these new roles. So remember that thought bubble that we did with you in the center and then all of the different roles that you now have that are different. From each of those, I want you to think about how you're feeling around those new roles. And you know what, I'm all about, we need to talk about if it's a negative feeling or, you know, something that makes you feel awkward, guilty, you know, whatever that is. I think that's really important for growth and in a way for you to move forward. So I've just written down a few things here. Are you feeling guilty around your new roles? Maybe you're embarrassed for whatever reason. So there's a couple of words here that have a negative undertone to it, but then there's also a couple of words here that have a positive undertone to it because maybe you've surprised yourself. Hopefully that is the case, that you've now tapped into this newfound strength and you've learned something different that you never thought you would learn before, and you're feeling really good about that. Those are really important things to note as well. So a little bit of an exercise for you, branching off of our last session with respect to roles and really taking apart each role and how you feel about it. That's really important. What have you learned about yourself as you've identified these roles? Because these roles don't define you. They are just a part of your experience. And this is a new experience. So again, I want you to think about if there's any kind of negative thought or negative undertone to what you've learned. I encourage you to write that down too, because it's just so important for growth and for learning and for change. So I've written down a couple of thoughts. I don't like how this has changed my life. And I would say that you're not alone in that thought if that's a thought that you have. I'm irritated with this reality. just really working here, everybody, to validate how you're feeling and thinking toward yourself in this situation that you are in now. Perhaps you found that you are stronger than you thought, which, hooray, that is fantastic. How empowering is that? You've realized that maybe, you know what, it's okay for me to ask for help and I don't have to do it all, which is really, really lovely. Having to let go of some things, and we're gonna talk about that, dissect it a little bit further. But so taking these two pieces, how are you feeling with respect to your roles, and what have you learned about self with respect to your roles? So dig a little deeper, and when we meet and talk about this session, we can pick it apart a little bit. So you get to control how you move forward with it. These are the two questions that I also want you to reflect on. Is moving forward, what am I going to allow to stay within myself? Thoughts, feelings, behaviors. I am human. Absolutely. I'm doing my best. You know, I accept the fact that I may not get it right all the time, and that's okay. So I've left a blank spot here for you too, and I really encourage you to dig a little bit deeper and think about what behaviors are you going to allow to stay in order for you to move forward, and what are you going to let go of? Perfection. I am not perfect. Nothing is perfect. No one is perfect. It's an unrealistic expectation, which then sets you up for potential failure, right? We think about that word expectation. It's a lot of pressure. So we're going to let go of the pressure. Letting go of being everything for everyone, because it's just not possible. That's when you discover that I'm not managing well. So really take some time, think about what you're going to allow to stay and what you're going to let go of. It's very important for moving forward. So here are some strategies that we're going to talk about to be able to move forward within these new roles. So we've talked a lot about, through these last few sessions, about change and recognizing that change, and that it's challenging, and that it's a little scary. But talk about it. Talk about the challenges with respect to these new roles. We touched a little bit on that the last session, and I want you to communicate what are the changes within these new roles and how you're going to manage it. Maybe you need to make some boundaries. Boundaries are crucial because it allows you to stay healthy and recognizing that you can't do it all and that that's okay. Have gratitude for yourself in managing these new responsibilities, because what you've taken on is not easy. And knowing your worth and your value, take some time. Ask for help from a support system. It could be family, it could be Brain Injury Association, it could be Peter's Place, it could be rehab, it could be wherever you find support, making sure that they're healthy supports, because you've been working so hard to get out of this negative thought pattern, and perhaps getting to that glass half full place, and you need to be surrounding yourself with positive people who are going to lift you up. Making sure that you take breaks from all of your responsibilities. Otherwise, you're going to run yourself ragged. So I love this image because it speaks to me, and I'm just wondering how if at all, if it speaks to you. The lush green forest, this pathway that seems to lead to who knows where, the sun rays beaming through the trees. It's just lovely. So I encourage you to listen to yourself, to your loved one, and it's okay to take some time before you respond. Again, it's all about healthy communication, and you kind of have to relearn how to communicate with this new reality. Breathing. So when you're listening and you're offering time, I want you to breathe. Think about what's being said. We're going to talk a little bit about brain first, recognizing that the challenges that you're facing, maybe the behaviors that are coming up are a result of the injury. And so it's important for us to keep that in our thinking as well. And trying not to take things personally. I know that's easier said than done. And sometimes it's going to sting a little bit. And it's important to feel those things and recognize that maybe was not their intention, and write it down, journal about it, reach out to your support systems and saying, you know what, this just happened and I feel really terrible about it. That's part of the healing and taking care of yourself. So if you wanted to talk about it or talk about anything, I write it down. Organize your thoughts before you have a discussion. This is really important because sometimes what will happen is you get so involved in the emotion of what's happening that you may just shoot from the hip and end up saying something that makes you feel awful or makes the other person feel awful, and then maybe you end up regretting it. So I really encourage you to organize your thoughts before you have these discussions so that you have some structure to what you want to say. That's not to say that it's emotionless, but certainly for you to be able to make sure that you can recall all of the things that you want to talk about. Finding support. Counseling, I know sometimes in this province it's not easy to find, and again, if you need help with that, I am happy to help support you in finding someone. And support groups. Peter's Place has been lovely. Brain Injury Association is wonderful. Lots of resources through this platform. Perhaps we'll be able to connect with other people in similar situations, and you can build a little support system. Always maintaining that it is a healthy, safe space, that there is no judgment. And again, we have to take care of each other, right? Delegate. Finding comfort in delegating certain responsibilities, tasks, anything, from delegating them to family or support or friends. Perhaps you live in a family unit where you have older children, and you know what, it's okay to get them to do things. If anything, that's teaching them a really lovely lesson, because you cannot be all things to all people. It is important to clearly communicate your needs and your limitations, because you're human, and that's so important to remember, is that you are human. And you know what, we're going to have good days and we're going to have not so good days, And that's a reality, and that's okay. We have to keep in mind that we're not going to get it all the time. Routine, I mean, this is something that I'm sure you guys are very well aware of. Sticky notes, those Post-it notes are wonderful. You can get them in many different colors. You can color coordinate it. That's a really good strategy that others have found really helpful. We just talked about this, thinking about brain first. Participation. You may have enjoyed going skiing before, and that's not something you can share together anymore. So within this new role of being a caregiver, encouraging you to find something that you can do together that you enjoy. You need to really work at finding something that you can do together. It may not have been something that you wanted to do before. We have to step outside of our comfort zone a little bit here. If you want to create, your new reality, it's important to try different things. And if you don't like it, that's okay. Find something different. It's good for you, and it's good for your loved one. I can't tell you enough. You have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of your own needs, and staying involved with things that help you relax, that bring you joy. I know that things are really hard right now, and it is going to get a little bit easier the more people settle into this new normal. It is not selfish to take time for yourself. Oftentimes as caregivers, we're told that, don't be so selfish, and why do you need to go and do whatever it is that you're going to do? You're not the one with the injury. That's that survivor's guilt piece. We don't need to wear that. Absolutely not. Because the only way that a caregiver is going to be able to do the best that they can is to care for themselves first. If you have a family, children, pets, that's a lot of responsibility. That's a lot of weight to bear. So it's just as important, if not more so, for you to take some time for you in whatever way that you possibly can, and selflessly. That's important. If you're having a bath, if you're sitting in the bathtub feeling guilty about being in the bath, really work to let that go. This is a moment for you to breathe, to catch your breath, to regroup, to recognize that the reason you're doing this is so that you can maintain the level of care that you're giving to your loved ones. I'm just going to stop sharing my screen here for a second, so just bear with me. Here we go. So a couple of things from this session is to dig into those roles, flip back in the video, and do some reflecting. And I'm also going to challenge you to take some time for you. And when we meet, would really like to talk about the different things that that you were able to do for yourself. Perhaps when we can share those things, other people will have some light bulb moments, or maybe offer some insight. And that's that whole peer support piece. I hope that you guys have a great day, that you get out and enjoy some of this beautiful sun. And we will see you next week. Take care, everyone.